After the success of Phenotype February, we were very inspired over in the data standard space. And we wanted to run another month of fabulous collaboration, but this time focused on the CDM and Themis conventions. So if you're not aware, Themis was recently revamped, and we've been building out some conventions that we want folks to follow when they're mapping their data to the CDM. But what we found is that a lot of times these conventions are now, they're on the website for the CDM, they're on the GitHub, some of them are on the Themis GitHub, and some of them are on the forum. And what we found is sometimes the correct approach can be ambiguous when you're trying to collate all this information across these 4 different places. Next slide. So what we wanted to do is actually spend this whole month of April identifying all the currently ratified CDM and Themis conventions for every table and field. And we know this is a big undertaking, which is why we're hoping to bring the whole community into this. We want to write clear documentation for these conventions. And the biggest one we want to do is use all of this that we're bringing together and establish a robust repository for these conventions. And you might be thinking, but Claire, you already have these on the CDM website. Why do we need a new repository? Well, the reason is we found that there are so many different conventions now because we have so many different collaborators with different types of data that if we were to shove it all into the CDM documentation, it would be really challenging to find. The CDM documentation would get overloaded, and it wouldn't be really clear what you're supposed to do if it was just all written in that table structure like we have out on the website. So we really feel like the repository is the best way to go. But along those lines, as we build out this repository, we need to clean up the CDM documentation. And lest you think I'm leaving out the expansion modules, we also want to use this opportunity to create documentation around these efforts that are going on. So we want to really use this month to focus on the CDM and all come together to get on the same page. Next slide. So as my son often tells me, teamwork makes the dream work. And we've come up with this idea to create 3 different teams that kind of have different people at different places of their CDM journey. We have the hunters of Artemis, the writers of Apollo, and the builders of Hephaestus. You'll note that AI did a really great job making these icons for me, though they don't know what a bow and arrow looks like. So I had to switch to a wolf for Artemis. Next slide. So the Hunters of Artemis, really this is going to be people on the hunt for ratified conventions. This group is going to search the Odyssey resources systematically by table and field, and they're going to open GitHub issues sharing this critical information for each one they track down. Next slide. The writers are going to pick up those conventions that the hunters find, and they're actually going to work to fill out a template and write out all the information relative to that specific convention. And these are already ratified conventions. So these are things we should already be doing as we map our data to the CDM. We're just cleaning them up and making them easier to find and really fleshing out all that detail. Then once a writer puts all that information together, it'll then shift over to the next group. Next slide. And these are the builders of Hephaestus. So the builders will pick up each document that's written, and they're going to begin building out this repository. And then the builders will also take that, that action item to then clean up the CDM website and make sure we're not housing any duplicate or unclear information between the CDM and Themis repository. Next slide. So then finally, the expansion module owners, we're going to be meeting with you guys individually. And what we would like for you guys to do would be to either create documentation or provide information on your tables under construction. So I've listed just a few here. So GIS, which I was chatting about earlier, medical imaging, which we've seen that great paper come out recently, and oncology. And I've starred oncology there because technically those tables are in the canonical CDM, but we know that there's some outstanding articles, and you guys have been working really hard on helping the community develop conventions for how to map your data into episode and episode event. So we just want to codify that and put it on the website. So please join us. This is you're gonna hear more about this as we get into April. I will put a link out in the chat as well. So if you would like to join, please sign up for one of the teams. If you go to that link, it'll take you to a form. Ideally, the time commitment is as much or as little as you want. We're trying to create discrete pieces of work so you can just pick up and maybe spend 10, 15 minutes if that's all you have. And there are no technical skills necessary. If you can Google, you can hunt. If you can read, you can write. It should be hopefully relatively straightforward. And we think this would be a really great way to bring the community together and refresh our documentation and our collective understanding of the CDM and how we map our data.